All right, welcome to another Paint Along with Acrylics. And today we're working with pet portraits. So learning how to create works of art of our favorite animal friends. And this is going to be a bit different from my previous sessions in that we'll be going over sort of steps and things you can do to create your own portrait more than just following along with what I'm doing. So I'll begin by going over some of my materials. I recently had to restock because I've done enough of these now that I've been running out of some things. So I bought some new brushes. I had damaged some of my other ones just by letting paint dry on them a little bit too long. And I chose this section, this type, because it's got a assortment of round and flat brushes in a variety of different sizes is all. I also had to buy some new paint, and I picked up this set mostly because it has process magenta, process cyan, and well, it calls these process. What these are is sort of the true primary colors: yellow, magenta, and cyan. And with these, you can mix them and get beautiful bright reds. If you mix cyan with a little bit of yellow, you'll get a bright red. You can get true purples by mixing cyan and magenta. You just have a fuller range of colors you can get by mixing things. There's still also, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, cadmium yellow, and ochre and black. So these are just some of the common colors you can get when you're painting. I'll leave that out. And as per normal, I have a cup of water, some paper towel for cleaning up, my palette, which is an old cutting board. It's getting well loved. That's fine. And I just have an easel here so that you guys can see a little bit better. If I'm not in the studio, I can't change the camera to be looking down on me as easily. So, starting off with your pet portraits. There's a bunch of different ways where you can start off with a sketch. You can freehand. This is one that I did start off with a picture, and I was just looking at the picture and freehanding as I sketched. So that's that one. You can also see here, if you're good with math, this one I did some math so that I could get the right sort of distance between the nose and the eyes, and then between the eyes and the top of the head and the ears, and sort of use that to transpose to create this one. So if you're skilled with math, this might be the way you go, right? My preference is kind of a cheat, but if you have access to a photocopier and a printer, what you can do is cut out sort of the picture of your pet, so follow along the outline. And you'll see here I cut out between the eyes and the nose so that I could indicate exactly where the center of the eyes and the nose are. And then I just sort of held it in place very firmly, or you could glue it with a bit of rubber cement. Rubber cement is great for something like this because you glue it on, it dries, and then you can sort of roll it up into a ball the way you would, the way rubber cement can be rolled up. And then just painting around the edges to create an outline and an indication of where the eyes and the nose are. And that will give you, a better indication of where the eyes and nose are on your pet or your friend's pet. you know, with a bit of experience, a bit of luck, you can create something that looks like a dog or a cat, or a bird. But then if it's, you know, a pet, it's not, your pet isn't just a bird or a dog, it's your bird and your dog. And, you know, they all have unique little idiosyncrasies that that make them yours and make you love them. So without further ado, I'm going to start using this one. And I'll show you just sort of how I build up layers to get this kind of color difference. You're going to want to select a color that gives you near the full range of shades. So with this one, I actually started with the ochre, and that was maybe not the best choice to start with, because ochre is kind of more of a middle tone. It doesn't give you the full light to very, very dark. You can use black, of course. Something like this ultramarine is quite dark, so it'll give you, you know, a shades from light to dark as well. And once you get more experienced, you can certainly, you know, play around with color and do different things. You could do the background in, well, I've got purple here. You can start with yellow, add blue, and then red. There's really, once you have a little bit of skill and experience, there's really not a lot limiting you to just one color or just one way of doing it. So, working from here, I've got my, maybe I'll set them up like this so you can see them side by side. I pre-set up my my paper here, like you can see. I did my outline, and then I left it to dry. And that way it will stay there permanently and not be making a mess or moving around while I'm trying to paint. That gives me a very firm outline or idea of where the outline of my pet is. Looking at, now I started this in purple. I think I'm going to move forward with, yes, I'll stick with the ultramarine. It's a good dark color. It will give me a full range. You can, of course, use black too. I happen to like, and you'll know this from my previous videos, but I happen to like using color just because having things that are black, almost black, or just slightly off shade. Oops. There's my friend. There's a neighborhood dog outside there. It's obviously caught her interest. Apologies. Okay, so starting with a very light shade, I'm adding a good amount of water to make it quite thin. And keeping in mind that I know where the center of the eyes are, I'm going to freehand sketch some of this. There's always some anxiety when you're free sketching. Good to note that, you know, if you don't like it, you can always just paint over it again. There's nothing to stop you from doing that. I do, you know, sometimes I paint over things several times. And you can always make corrections in subsequent layers. So we're going to do, this is a first layer. And I'm just filling in some detail now. And you can see I'm working from a black and white picture right now. If you're going to be doing, if you have access to, you know, anything that will get you a black and white picture, I should say, that can be very handy because it helps you focus on the gradient. So the shades of black and white, and you can be less concerned about what colors you're working with. We're eventually hoping to work towards creating something like this in black and white, and then we'll add the color afterwards. If you watch the stream where we worked on making morning glories, it's a similar idea. You build up layers and get black and white. Get all the shades down. And then you move on to trying to get the colors right. It sort of breaks it down, makes it more methodical. And allows you to focus sort of on discrete parts of your creation rather than trying to make it all at once. Also much more forgiving for if you make a mistake, it's easy to correct. You just have to add a little bit more shade or a little bit more highlight. And that will correct whatever you might have done. Oops. And because we're working with such watery paint, if you make a mistake, it's also easy to just pat it dry, pat it off like that. Acrylics dry fairly fast. So you can do several layers. And you know, I have days where I just have to go, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. I might do half an hour and then I say I'm done. Some days I can go for hours. When you're working in this technique, you can stop anytime and then just pick it up again a little bit later. So I'm sort of focusing on the detail of the face here just to show you how you can build up layers and I think I've made the eyes a little too big. That's okay. I can fix it. I'll come back and add more highlights there a little bit later. Go back to making things pretty light. I should add in sort of the bottom of the face. So painting you can do, you can of course make alterations to the photo if you like. As with this one, I sort of took off the harness but kept the handkerchief. And then when I copied it over, I actually positioned it incorrectly while I was sketching, so I had to sort of flip it around, improvise the other leg. But we're working with paint, so you can do that. Not going to worry right now about the detail on the handkerchief. And in fact, I may just keep it plain. That's fine too. too dark. If it's too dark, you just add a little bit of water to it to thin it out. And again, take a dab. And if you've sort of got to the point, like I am now, where, and I'm just focusing on the feints. If we had more time, I could do the full body, but I'd like to sort of arrange things differently. Or show you more than just sort of the start of the painting. So you can add, I added a little bit of black, a little bit of white to my palette there. All right. And this is going to help me round out or get into those very dark shadows and very bright highlights. It helps also if you have some fine brushes that can sort of handle the dark spots. And that's the mistake I've made here, is I put this too far down. But I can correct it. So, the better your sketching skills are, the better or easier this part usually tends to go. My art teacher used to say, you know, you should sketch every day. And well, I appreciate that sentiment, and I know exactly why he said that. There are just not enough hours in the day to do all the practices I'd like to do every day. So, that's how that goes. But it's also why I choose to do this method of layering up paintings. So that I can correct any mistakes I might need to. And it's a narrowing down. If it's not right the first time, you can get the second, or the third, or the fourth. You might be on the 200th time. As long as you're still willing to work on it. I learned once that eventually they had to kick Picasso out of the museum in Paris, or the art galleries in Paris, because he would go in with a brush and some paints and start altering his own masterpieces. So, years later, you can still go back and change it if you want. Something I don't like about this eye. It's taking me a while. If he tries to figure out what it is. There we go. That's a little bit better. I feel like I'm painting eyeliner on the dog, but it's all natural. That's what's actually on the painting. Or actually in the photo, I should say. Now then. Getting the various hairs out there. She's a fluffy puppy. There we are. So it's nice to have the blue that gives, you know, like an undertone or a variation again to the painting. But in this case, I do like to use the black so that I can get the full, you know, where there is dark, real dark, I can get the full effect of it there. I should probably be changing brushes too. I'm being a bit lazy. There we go. And really, if I had wanted to stick to my feelings about, you know, not using black or pure black, what I would have been able to do is mix up a composite black using, you know, other colors in my palette. And then just store that in a little container so that every time I needed the painting I could use it or mix it up again. And black really is fine. I think I've said before, though, visually paintings that are almost black, especially if you have, maybe several different shades of almost black, they tend to be just a bit more visually interesting. Our eyes say, there's more variety there. There's more to look at. There we go. So you can get a bit of the general idea. Building up layers, adding in detail, and just going over your mistakes. If you don't like something, try it again. If you think that needs to be lighter or darker, you can try it. If you want to sort of change and eliminate the whole thing, you can do that too. Having a black and white picture and working just on shades is helpful. When you get a little bit more experienced, you can add in different colors and make your paintings more visually interesting by sort of throwing in, it's like a surprise, right? I expect to see green, but hey, there's actually red in there. Interesting. So I'm sort of jumping ahead here. You can spend as many hours as you want getting your black and white or shade picture, sort of in the state you want it in. Just gonna clean up a little bit here. Clean off my palette so I don't mix things up. And if you come up with a beautiful, two-tone masterpiece for your pet portrait, then that's fantastic. If you want to start adding color, however, then you can do that fairly easily too. So this has been dried, and what I've got is my my cadmium red is the hue I'm using right now. And I'm gonna leave the handkerchief plain, I think. I'll sort of start demoing how this works. There. So Again, I'm glazing, just using thin washes of color. I don't need to worry too much about shade because that's already sort of included there. Right, and that would be one layer there. Let me get a bit of green. So red and green make brown because they are opposite colors. Going to use so little. Put some on the side, I think. There we go. This one's called Permanent Green Middle. So I've got a little bit of a reddish brown here, just by adding a touch of green to the red. I'm going to start on this ear here. You see how I can kind of go just straight over top. This is yellow ochre. I'm going to add, give it a little bit more of an orangey tint. But this is kind of a dull yellow. It's not a vibrant yellow. Using a brush that's too big. All right. Flip that back. I'll work on this big area here before I switch over to the smaller brush again. And does some of the underpainting kind of show through? Absolutely. Put enough layers on it and it won't. And that's, you know, part of the control you have as the artist, is you can decide when you're done and when to move on. Like I said, Picasso. Gonna need some white. And when you do the colors, you might need white or black, depending on whether or not you find your if you made some area too dark, or depending on how the colors are reacting, and that's okay. You can also soften some colors, so like our puppy here has lovely green eyes. Adding a little white there is going to change that shade just ever so slightly and make those sort of a believable green as opposed to scary snake green. There we go. At this point, if you do have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. I'll sort of finish working away. Take a few seconds to answer. We won't get to completed product today. Like I said, these things, you got to take your time. And I find after an hour, I at that point, I'm just sort of pushing paint around the canvas and not even really getting anywhere. think I do want some black. Do some shades around the eyes. It really is just like applying eyeliner. If only I could do my eyes as well. I usually tend up messing them up. That's there. Now you notice I'm working quite small today. And that's of course because the details on here are quite fine. And the bigger your piece of art is, the longer it's going to take. So, and I don't have, well, I don't have the stamina to go on for an infinite time. So that's, this gives you some sort of idea of the interplay that the different colors can, when you're adding colors, the interplay between sort of the dark and light. Interplay between the shade layer and the color layer. Because you can still see the purple. It shows up. I'll give you a closer look. The purple shows up around the edges, but you can still see the actual shade of the dog as well. So it shows up in surprising places, kind of in a surprising way for your eyes. Your eyes like, yeah, the dog should be brown, and then it realizes, wait, there's purple. It's kind of a... And your eye enjoys that surprise. Now, if you worked it long enough, let's say you decided you really didn't like the purple, you could, of course, eliminate it almost without effort, or eliminate it to the point where you almost don't see it at all. And I know I said you should really do a good shade layer before you go back and add colors, or do a shade layer and then a colored layer. I didn't actually say anything about the fact that you can go back and forth between them. But again, there's nothing that says that you can't. So if the fancy struck me and I wanted to do another layer of purple, then really, why not? And if you're halfway through your sort of color glazes and thinking, maybe I didn't do this part properly or correctly or well with the shading, then go back and do more shading. You can see here I left the lines, my outline was very strong on here. I sort of realized that I should have taken some white and kind of softened that a bit. So going back and doing that. More pinkish on the nose. There we go. And again, really, you pick whenever you're satisfied. There is beauty in paintings that sort of reveal a little bit of the secrets of how they are made as well. Okay. So there's a little bit of a better, close up. The background you can apply the same techniques to. So if you wanted to paint the grass, you can certainly, add that in there, do a black and white layer, add some green color on top of it. That's absolutely doable. All right. And, just feel free to go and explore. I know I've said it already, but this style of painting is very forgiving. You make a mistake, you can just wipe it up, let it dry, and go at it again. So thank you for watching tonight. I'd be, very interested in hearing about any, or even seeing pictures of any of your pet portraits that show up. Feel free to send them to WPL in an email, and I know my colleagues will make sure they get it to me. Thank you for watching. and good luck. We are back. I'm back around the end of February doing something again that's end of January. Doing something again that's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be teaching you how to stretch your own canvas. And that can be really interesting because when you stretch a canvas, of course, you can use canvas. Or you can use any other material you want. So if you are interested in, making a wall hanging out of your grandmother's tablecloth, some old curtains, a favorite pair of blue jeans, you can absolutely do that by stretching it on a canvas, and I'll show you how. All right, look forward to seeing you then. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good night.